In 1998, the western United States, particularly California, felt as if it were strapped into a roller coaster engineered by tech entrepreneurs, surfers, screen legends, and social activists, all jostling for control of the ride. It was a year saturated with incidents and stories that veered from the outright strange to the historically significant. In the span of 12 months, the region saw political upsets, urban transformations, heated courtroom battles, cultural turning points, and the birth of tech ventures that would go on to change the world. Rather than simply reacting to the broader American narrative, the West was carving out its own version of the future, influencing national discourse with a stubborn, often chaotic kind of energy that only it could summon. The year 1998 started with a bold move from California that would ripple across the nation. On January 1st, the Golden State officially banned smoking in all bars and restaurants, marking a major milestone in public health policy. This wasn't just a quiet rule change. It was a cultural shift. Smokers who once lit up over drinks and dinner were now told to take it outside, while non-smokers breathed a collective sigh of relief. The law made fresh air not just acceptable, but trendy. And California proudly led the way, puffing out its chest as a model of clean-lunged virtue. The ban wasn't without controversy. Bar owners grumbled and tobacco lobbyists fumed, but the message was clear. The West Coast was done choking on cigarette smoke. Mid-January brought a different kind of high, altitude and adrenaline. From January 15th to 18th, Crested Butte, Colorado hosted the Winter X Games, drawing daredevils from around the world and showcasing the best in snowboarding, freestyle skiing, and extreme winter sports. With spinning tricks and wild landings, the slopes came alive with a new breed of athlete who didn't care about medals so much as they cared about style and spectacle. Snowboarders carved through the powder with the swagger of rock stars, and the mountain echoed with the thump of youth culture in motion. But the real roar came from Denver on January 25th, when the Broncos made history. In Super Bowl 32, they ended the AFC's 14-year losing streak by beating the Green Bay Packers 31-24 in a game that had fans on both sides of the Mississippi glued to their screens. For Denver, it was more than a win. It was redemption. John Elway, long seen as a talented quarterback who couldn't quite bring home the big one, finally had his moment. The Mile High City erupted in celebration, and Elway was elevated from hometown hero to living legend practically overnight. While the West was either flying off ski jumps or hoisting Lombardi trophies, the rest of the country was spiraling into scandal. On January 26th, President Bill Clinton stood on national television and delivered the now infamous line, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." The Monica Lewinsky scandal was in full swing, grabbing headlines coast to coast. But out west, many residents observed the drama like it was distant thunder. The political chaos in Washington, D.C. felt oddly disconnected from the realities of Western life, where the local buzz was centered on other stories. In Silicon Valley and beyond, eyes were on the business world as Compaq pulled off a major acquisition by buying out Digital Equipment Corporation. It was a big play in the tech world and part of a larger wave of consolidation and ambition defining the late 90s. Meanwhile, researchers in Dallas made headlines by presenting new findings about an enzyme that might slow aging and delay cell death. The discovery caught the imagination of biotech investors and longevity enthusiasts alike. With tech giants rising, medical breakthroughs looming, and snowboards carving up mountain peaks, the American West was very much alive, and the year was only just getting started. California, already grappling with a series of unpredictable weather events triggered by the ongoing El Niño phenomenon, remained on edge as storms and heavy rainfall continued to cause damage across the state. Mudslides, flooding, and infrastructure strain were common, especially in coastal areas and regions with saturated soil. Despite these challenges, it was Florida that ultimately bore the brunt of El Niño's fury mid-month, as a series of violent and deadly tornadoes ripped through central parts of the state. The destruction was severe, with homes flattened, entire communities displaced, and dozens of lives tragically lost. The disaster served as a brutal reminder of the power of nature and the far-reaching effects of climatic shifts. Meanwhile, up in Washington state, the spotlight returned to one of the most controversial and disturbing criminal cases of the decade. Mary Kay Letourneau, a former middle school teacher whose sexual relationship with a 12-year-old student had made national headlines just a year prior, found herself back in prison. Letourneau had previously received a reduced sentence under the condition that she avoid any further contact with the boy, who by then was a teenager. However, after being caught together again, she was ordered to serve the remainder of her full sentence. The case continued to stir debates over consent, power dynamics, and the legal system's handling of female offenders in teacher-student relationships. To the south, in Oregon, authorities uncovered a chilling plot that underscored the growing concern over domestic terrorism within the United States. 2 white separatists were arrested and charged after law enforcement discovered their plans to launch a biological warfare attack targeting the New York City subway system. The 2 men had reportedly been stockpiling dangerous materials and discussing potential dispersal methods that could have led to mass casualties. Though the plan was thwarted before any harm could occur, the arrests sent shockwaves through intelligence and law enforcement communities. The incident highlighted the emerging threats posed by extremist groups operating within the country's borders, foreshadowing a decade to come that would be increasingly defined by internal security challenges and the fight against homegrown terrorism. California was especially in the spotlight on March 23rd, when the glitz and glamour of the 70th Academy Awards took over Los Angeles. The ceremony was a massive cultural event that year, largely thanks to the runaway success of Titanic, which dominated the night by winning an impressive 11 Oscars. Director James Cameron, riding high on the film's global success, famously declared, "I'm king of the world," during his acceptance speech, a quote straight from his own film that quickly became part of pop culture history. With over 57 million viewers tuning in across the country, it became the most watched Oscars telecast of all time, a testament to both the public's fascination with the epic love story and the draw of Hollywood spectacle. Just a few days later, on March 27th, the Food and Drug Administration made headlines of its own by approving Viagra, the first oral medication designed to treat erectile dysfunction. The blue pill didn't just change the pharmaceutical industry, it also changed the tone of advertising forever. Suddenly, late-night TV and glossy magazines were filled with ads that danced around the topic with awkward metaphors and sly winks, signaling a cultural shift in how America talked about aging, intimacy, and male health. Meanwhile, California stayed in the news for other, less glamorous reasons. In a strange and unsettling twist, a Ku Klux Klan leader was fined for burning a cross in his own yard, a move that violated state air quality regulations. Even hate speech, it turned out, had to comply with California's environmental laws. And while adults dealt with politics, medicine, and legal battles, kids across the country were happily glued to their TVs as the oddball British import Teletubbies made its U.S. debut in April. With its bright colors, gibberish speak, and surreal tone, the show baffled adults but mesmerized children, quickly becoming a fixture in living rooms coast to coast. Las Vegas went boom on purpose when the original Aladdin Hotel and Casino was brought down in a dramatic, controlled implosion on April 27th. The explosion sent clouds of dust into the desert sky as the once iconic structure crumbled to the ground, making room for a sleeker, glitzier version of the resort. It was more than just a demolition. It was a signal that the city was ready to leave behind its mid-century past and usher in a new era of mega resorts, bigger shows, and even more over-the-top indulgence. The Strip, always hungry for reinvention, didn't miss a beat as it welcomed the future of luxury gambling and nonstop entertainment. Meanwhile, on April 18th, Toon Disney, a new channel devoted entirely to animated programming, launched with a promise to deliver round-the-clock cartoons, drawing in a generation of kids and nostalgic adults alike. For many, it became an after-school ritual or a comforting background presence, another sign that the television landscape was shifting into full-time niche programming. But California's spring also took a much darker turn. In a moment that shocked the public and media alike, Daniel V. Jones, a man suffering from terminal illness and despair, ended his life in a devastatingly public way on a Los Angeles freeway. After a tense standoff with law enforcement, Jones took his own life inside his pickup truck, an act that was broadcast live on television to millions of viewers. The incident sparked immediate outrage and concern over the ethics of airing live police pursuits, forcing news stations and the public to confront the consequences of real-time broadcasting. The haunting footage and its aftermath stirred widespread debate about mental health, privacy, media responsibility, and how far the thirst for sensational content had gone. Spring took a dark turn in the Pacific Northwest. In the quiet community of Springfield, Oregon, 15-year-old Kiplin Kinkle committed an act of shocking violence that would leave a lasting scar on the region. After being suspended from Thurston High School for bringing a firearm onto campus, Kinkle returned home and fatally shot both of his parents. The next morning, on May 21, 1998, he entered the school armed with multiple weapons and opened fire on his classmates in the school cafeteria. 2 students were killed and 25 others were injured, some critically. The attack sent shockwaves through Oregon and the entire country, igniting renewed national debates over gun control, mental health, and school safety. Communities across the West began looking inward, questioning how such a tragedy could happen in a seemingly peaceful town. Meanwhile, in California's ever-expanding tech frontier, another kind of battle was brewing, this one in the courtroom. On May 18th, the U.S. Department of Justice, along with 20 states, filed a sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft Corporation. The case targeted the software giant's alleged monopolistic practices, particularly its bundling of Internet Explorer with the Windows operating system, which critics argued was a deliberate move to crush competition in the web browser market. The legal confrontation marked a turning point for Silicon Valley, signaling that the federal government was ready to challenge the growing power of the tech industry. What began in Northern California's innovation hubs as a digital revolution was now under legal scrutiny as regulators and lawmakers struggled to keep up with the rapid rise of technology titans. On June 2, 1998, California voters approved Proposition 227, a sweeping change in the state's approach to public education. The initiative called for an end to most bilingual education programs, replacing them with a system that prioritized English-only instruction for non-native speakers. Supporters of the measure argued that immersing students in English would accelerate language acquisition and improve academic performance. However, critics, particularly within Latino communities throughout California and the broader Southwest, saw the proposition as an attack on cultural identity and linguistic diversity. The backlash was immediate and intense, igniting protests, court challenges, and a nationwide debate over assimilation, equity, and the role of language in public education. For many families, the passage of Proposition 227 was not just a policy shift. It felt personal, a signal that their heritage was being sidelined in the name of standardization. Just days later, on June 14th, sports fans across the West and the entire country witnessed a moment that would be etched into basketball history. In the final seconds of Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Michael Jordan, playing what would be his last game as a Chicago Bull, delivered a signature play that seemed almost scripted. With the Utah Jazz leading late in the fourth quarter at home in Salt Lake City, Jordan stole the ball, brought it down the court, and with just seconds remaining, pulled up and sank a smooth, iconic jumper. The shot clinched the Bulls' 6th championship in 8 years and effectively sealed Jordan's legendary career. For fans in Utah, the moment was both stunning and painful. A heartbreak delivered with grace and finality. For the rest of the world, it was the exclamation point on one of the greatest athletic careers in history. Amid the triumphs and tensions of the month, a deeply troubling event unfolded in Seaside, California that cast a long shadow over the community. On June 12th, 13-year-old Christina Marie Williams disappeared while walking her dog near her home. Her sudden and unexplained absence shocked the small coastal town and prompted a massive search effort that included local law enforcement, volunteers, and national media coverage. Flyers, candlelight vigils, and pleas from her family dominated the summer months. As days turned into weeks with no answers, fear and heartbreak gripped the region. The case remained open and unresolved for years, haunting not only Seaside, but the broader Monterey Peninsula. Christina's story became a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of children and the lasting emotional impact such tragedies leave behind. Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan premiered in theaters across the country on July 24, 1998, earning widespread acclaim for its harrowing and realistic portrayal of World War II. The film resonated deeply with audiences, especially in California, where the entertainment industry was thriving and constantly pushing cinematic boundaries. With its gripping storytelling, intense battle sequences, and emotional weight, the movie became a defining cultural moment of the year. It also reaffirmed Spielberg's position position at the top of Hollywood's creative pyramid, as critics and viewers alike praised the film for its artistry and historical impact. Across Los Angeles, from studio boardrooms to local theaters, the film sparked conversations about patriotism, sacrifice, and the power of visual storytelling in a digital age. However, that same week, the national focus abruptly shifted away from cinema and toward a grim and tragic event on the East Coast. In Washington, D.C., a gunman stormed the United States Capitol, opening fire and killing 2 Capitol police officers. The attack shocked the nation and underscored the growing concerns about public safety and the vulnerability of even the most iconic and secure institutions. While the Western states were physically far from the event, the emotional impact rippled across the country. News coverage dominated the airwaves, and discussions about security, mental health, and gun control intensified across California, Oregon, and beyond. August 1998 was sweltering in more ways than one. Both the weather and the political climate reached boiling points. On August 17th, President Bill Clinton publicly admitted to what he called an improper physical relationship with former White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The televised confession followed months of speculation, investigations, and headlines that had gripped the nation. His admission marked a pivotal moment in what had become a full-blown political scandal, one that would shape the remaining months of his presidency and dominate cable news cycles. Just 3 days later, on August 20th, the United States launched cruise missile strikes in retaliation for the devastating August 7th bombings of its embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, attacks that killed 224 people and injured thousands. The missiles targeted suspected terrorist training camps in Afghanistan, as well as a pharmaceutical plant in Sudan, which the U.S. government claimed was involved in the production of chemical weapons and linked to Osama bin Laden. The strikes intensified debate over foreign policy, the emerging threat of global terrorism, and the timing of military action during a domestic political crisis. On September 4th, in a modest garage in Menlo Park, California, 2 Stanford graduate students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, officially founded Google. At the time, few outside the tight-knit tech community understood the scope of what they were building. But within months, the search engine began redefining how people accessed and understood information. Silicon Valley, already buzzing with dot-com ambition, found itself nurturing what would soon become one of the most powerful companies on Earth. In retrospect, the founding of Google marked a pivotal shift, not just in technology, but in the very fabric of modern life, setting the stage for a data-driven 21st century that would be born right there on the edge of the Pacific. Elsewhere in California that same week, the news had a far darker tone. Dana Sue Gray, a former nurse from Southern California, pled guilty to 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder on September 9th. Her crimes had shocked communities across the state. Gray had targeted elderly women, befriending them before robbing and killing them to fuel a compulsive shopping addiction. Though she was also suspected in the death of a 3rd victim, the plea deal focused on the most clear-cut cases. Her confession closed one of the state's most disturbing true crime chapters of the decade and brought a measure of closure to the victims' families. Meanwhile, sports fans, and even many who didn't follow baseball, found a brief, uplifting distraction. On September 8th, St. Louis Cardinals first baseman Mark McGwire hit his 62nd home run of the season, breaking the legendary single-season record set by Roger Maris in 1961. The blast came in the 4th inning at Busch Stadium, and as the ball sailed over the fence, the crowd erupted in a euphoric roar. Cameras captured McGwire hugging Maris's family and saluting the fans in a moment that felt like the heart of America itself. It was a rare instant of national unity, one of pure sports joy, as people from coast to coast celebrated what seemed to be a triumphant achievement. Of course, that sense of innocence wouldn't last. In the years that followed, revelations about performance-enhancing drug use in baseball, including McGwire's own admission, would tarnish the glow of that September evening. But in the moment, it felt like hope, strength, and nostalgia had all come together under the bright stadium lights. Meanwhile, Las Vegas was preparing for its own seismic shift, not in politics, but in luxury and spectacle, as the Bellagio Hotel and Casino officially opened its doors on October 15th. backed by Steve Wynn and boasting an opulence inspired by Italian elegance. The Bellagio promised to raise the bar for high-end entertainment, gaming, and hospitality. With its soon-to-be iconic dancing fountains and fine art displays, it signaled a new era for Las Vegas. Less grit, more glamour, and a bold step into the world of upscale destination tourism. Meanwhile, far away from the neon lights and marble floors, another kind of history was being made above Earth's atmosphere. On October 29th, John Glenn, the first American to orbit the planet back in 1962, returned to space at the age of 77 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery. His journey captivated millions, especially baby boomers who had grown up with Glenn as a national hero. The flight was both scientific and symbolic, a moment that bridged generations and reminded the country of its deep-rooted fascination with space exploration. Glenn's participation was seen not just as a tribute to human endurance, but also a statement about aging and relevance in modern America. However, while one part of the West celebrated spectacle and progress, another part was mourning. On October 6th in Laramie, Wyoming, the brutal beating of 21-year-old Matthew Shepard shook the nation. Shepard, a gay college student, was discovered tied to a fence on the outskirts of town, unconscious and severely injured after a targeted attack. He died 6 days later from his wounds. The story spread quickly across the country, sparking outrage, candlelight vigils, and calls for legislative change. Although further investigation later revealed a more complicated background and motivations than initially reported, the crime nonetheless galvanized public awareness about anti-gay violence. It triggered one of the most intense and emotional national conversations about hate crimes the country had seen in years, and it left an indelible mark on how such violence is discussed and legislated. In movie theaters across California, families packed in with popcorn and excitement to watch Pixar's latest animated feature, A Bug's Life, which premiered on November 25th. The film, a colorful and cleverly written adventure about an outcast ant trying to save his colony from tyrannical grasshoppers, quickly won over audiences of all ages. It was Pixar's second full-length feature, following the massive success of Toy Story, and it cemented the studio's growing reputation as a powerhouse of storytelling and innovation in computer animation. For many West Coast viewers, it wasn't just a movie. It was a vivid, shared moment of joy during the holiday season, especially as the dot-com boom fueled Silicon Valley's sense of limitless possibility. At the same time, over 2,500 miles away in Washington, D.C., the political scene was descending into full-blown theater of its own. On November 19, the impeachment hearings for President Bill Clinton officially began, pulling the nation into a constitutional drama fueled by scandal, spectacle, and nonstop cable news coverage. The West Coast, though somewhat removed geographically, was fully tuned in, as media outlets based in Los Angeles and San Francisco churned out commentary and parodies almost as fast as the story evolved. The combination of high-stakes politics and tabloid scandal kept Americans, whether in Sacramento or Seattle, glued to their screens. December marked the release of The Prince of Egypt on the 18th, an animated biblical epic from DreamWorks that pushed the limits of traditional animation and storytelling. Partly produced in California, the film blended cutting-edge visuals with an orchestral score and a serious narrative, rarely attempted in animated cinema at the time. It was a bold move for DreamWorks, still relatively new to the animation scene, and its success helped solidify the studio as a serious rival to Disney in the family entertainment space. Over time, The Prince of Egypt would come to be regarded not just as a box office success, but as one of the finest animated films ever made. Meanwhile, up north in Silicon Valley, the tech world showed no signs of slowing down. The digital gold rush was in full swing. On November 24th, America Online, AOL, announced plans to acquire Netscape in a deal valued at $4.2 billion, a move that signaled a consolidation of power in the early internet space and a shift toward fewer, bigger players controlling the web. Just days later, on December 1st, Exxon and Mobil, two titans of the oil industry, announced a record-setting $73.7 billion merger. It was one of the largest corporate deals in history, and it created Exxon Mobil, which would go on to become the second largest company in the world by revenue. All signs pointed to one thing. The end of the decade wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. Still, amid the glitz of movie premieres and billion-dollar mergers, the West bore witness to moments of quiet compassion and persistent conflict. In a touching act of grassroots activism, elementary school students in Aurora, Colorado, raised $35,000, enough to purchase freedom for hundreds of enslaved children in Sudan. Their campaign, small in scope but enormous in heart, captured national attention and served as a reminder that even in an era obsessed with stock prices and celebrity culture, kids could still move the needle on global human rights. Then, on December 19th, the political climax of the year arrived. President Bill Clinton was formally impeached by the House of Representatives, making him only the second U.S. president to face such proceedings. Although the impeachment stemmed from the Lewinsky scandal, it represented a broader cultural clash that had dominated American politics throughout the year. The West, like the rest of the country, was left to wonder how the crisis would unfold as the new year loomed large. Looking back, 1998 was a year that never hit pause. It was fast-moving, noisy, and unpredictable, full of groundbreaking innovations and sobering moments of national reflection. The Western states embodied this energy fully, sometimes leading, sometimes reacting, but always pulsing with change. From courtroom dramas to high-speed internet, from animated epics to classroom fundraisers, the West remained a dynamic, restless part of the American experiment. It was a year that felt like it could only happen at the edge of a century and the edge of a continent. 1998 was loud, fast, digital, and unfiltered, just like the West itself.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 1 9 on X, we're here just for you.